Добрый день, уважаемые.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to welcome you to our session, Big Data versus Traditional Valuation. And today we will be talking about what we now refer to as oil of the new economy, namely about the big data, how the big data is used on various platforms and various jurisdictions, how do we collect big data, what stands in the way of free transfer of big data, and of course we will try to answer the question of who does big data belong to, how do we regulate it, and in what sectors of economy they are most needed. It is not a secret. I believe you are all aware that big data today is generated at the speed of light. As the statistics suggest, 19% of all global data was collected in the last 2 years. And I'm not referring to the particular 2 last years, but to every 2 last years. And the rest of the history will always account only for 10% of big data, because we have new tools to collect, store, and process big data. We accumulate enormous amounts of data that can be used for economic purposes. And of course, the economy starts to rely on big data, starts to use it for its purposes. And that is how new business models come to exist. They, of course, require new regulation. And today, we see that data doesn't really have borders. There are various regulations and norms in its way, and data either circumvent these obstacles like water, or by replacing these obstacles and going to free economic zones. So today we start to build a model that make our data work for us as water that starts to roll the fans of the mill. So our task that we face today is to see whether we build our big data use models in a productive way. And in order to do that, let us start with the topic that is of interest to all of us. How do we analyze big data? How do we analyze data? Where does data come from? How do we study it? What is big data analysis? In what kind of results it might give us? Are there any cases of big data processing? And now I would like to give the floor to Executive Director of ResearchMe company, Alexander Bulgakov. And he will elaborate on online social network studies for IP protection purposes. Thank you very much, colleagues. Hello. It is true that I'm a black sheep here. I believe that most of you are IP lawyers. I'm a sociologist. That is what I do. That is my profession. I've always worked on behavior analysis projects. But let me tell you that I worked for major telecom companies. I worked for Yandex, and now I work on a project for Mail.ru company that seeks to integrate classical polling data with consumer behavior analysis. Our project was announced 2 years ago, And the idea is to integrate polling data with data collected by two major Russian social networks, VK and Одноклассники, both belonging to Mail.ru group. So how can sociologists be of help to IP lawyers, IP experts? Let me illustrate it with a case. How sociologists do help IP lawyers. Normally, there are two reasons for us to work together. Either we decided to go to court or we are subpoenaed to court because of a trademark dispute. The latest case that I have in my portfolio is about a trademark. The Nevskaya Cosmetica company said that P.G infringed their rights. Before that, normally what we would do is we would conduct an all-Russia poll, we would use tons of paper, we would ask consumers whether they cannot distinguish from Procter & Gamble products and Nevskaya Cosmetica products. These polls can be used as an argument in Russian courts, and we employ several approaches here. I'm referring to digital polling and collecting of data from social networks. First, it is much cheaper. We can use it in courts. For example, in one case, we would show 2 packs of washing powder to our consumers, and they, of course, recognized that they were fairly alike. But we found out that, yes, people believed these 2 packs were very much alike because both of these packages had handles. It was a 6-kilo pack. But when we changed our approach to the polling and when we made people look at the trademarks, it became obvious that our results were much more accurate. So big data analysis and cheap polling gives you an opportunity to use totally new tools. For example, on this picture, we see a so-called thermal map. When we use eye tracking technologies, it's a heat map where we compare vision journeys of a great number of people, and we track their shelf journey. If you're interested in the result, unfortunately, Nevskaya Cosmetica company did not manage to collect payments in damages from Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble won the case. If we speak about how various types of data collection can be integrated, of course, we're referring to enormous body of data. You, as social network users, transfer a lot of your data to the owners of the social networks. Plus, we have data from retailers because they have their loyalty cards that you use, and they collect data from them. But of course, that makes us face new challenges, and there is a number of new issues that do not have a standard solution. And of course, for me, it is of interest as a sociologist to act as consumers' attorney, because people are the primal source of data, and not only of data. You, as lawyers, were probably taught that people have rights because this society aspires for justice. And we have a collision of interest here. Businesses want to see a better economy thanks to the use of data, and consumers want to be treated properly. We know cases when big data processing led to destruction of trust. For example, let us remember the Facebook case. And of course, we do not want to see the trust being damaged. Of course, consumers agree to their data being processed when communication companies give their data to the state for them to build better infrastructure and better roads. They agree to transfer their data to retailers if it helps retailers to adjust goods and services to consumers' needs. But the best case scenario is in China, where just like in our country, they have major national players in social media sector, and where they use big data for the greater good, because it helps to enhance the trust of the society. We need to strike a balance between using big data and treating our clients properly. That would be close to what they have in China. And in this case, it would be both beneficial for businesses and for consumers who won't be scared about companies using their data. I'm sorry I ran out of time, but I am very passionate about the topic.
Thank you very much. You know, when we take such an angle to big data, you always want to say two things. I said already about the accumulation of data. The second thing is the research that shows that a experienced psychologist analyzing your social network account can look into what likes you give to other people and say and tell you who you are. Because that person, experienced psychologist, can know you better by analyzing your social media account than a person who lives next to you in a building. By analyzing 200 to 300 likes you gave other people, a psychologist can know you even better than your spouse. That is the real research data. After analyzing 2,000 to 3,000 likes you gave other people, a psychologist can know you better than you know yourself. Again, this is a real research data. So a psychologist will know your responses to various stimuli, to various problems and issues. So that is the power of big data. You see, big data give new opportunities to analyze consumer behavior and new ways to analyze the demand, to help you adjust your marketing, to also control the society in a way. So the problem we are faced today is the depersonification of data. That's what should be done. But the current regulation does not regulate these matters because the regulations we have, they do not cover that area. For instance, we all know the GDPR, right? The global European regulation for personal data. We say, yes, we need our data protected, but we forget that personal data on the social media is being given freely to everyone. We give the voluntary consent to give that data to everyone. And this way, this personal data from the social media cannot be protected. You voluntarily gave it out, gave it away, so it is not covered by the GDPR. And that means that you help companies to analyze your data, access your personal data. They can analyze you with the help of the big data, and then tailor their marketing and PR to target you. sociology has been depersonified. First, we used to poll people. Now we poll not people, but clusters of people, differentiating between them in such a way as to ask different people with different interests. Let's take Afanasyev and Partners. That company, that legal firm, they are working on intellectual property and polling these days. And they say that it is very difficult to find any credibility in the kind of consumer behavior analysis which is being done today, because every research today is very narrow. It's based on personal data collected from the people, and that is why it helps to create very targeting marketing and PR. So we need to strike balance. If we find a way to depersonify data, if we help to make it all transparent, then people will trust more online polls. But at this time, I can say that online polls are not really credible, because sometimes you can tamper with it by giving a very specific group of people to that internet poll. So the results it would give would be not good at all. First, people tend to not to trust polls. For example, I don't know who participated in that polling, or where it took place, and how it took place, what algorithm was used. You can go to court, and that court will last for 1 or 2 years trying to find those people who were behind that internet poll. That is the problem, to find a way to make these online polls more credible. And we need to do that because we need better consumer behavior mechanisms. And not only consumer behavior assessment is needed, we need also to assess the innovations, scientific research. We lawyers call it the current level of technological development. We need to understand where we are in terms of our technological development. We need to understand what things are new and can be patented, what things are not new and cannot be patented. And that might be done through analyzing that gap between one innovation and another innovation. 10 years ago, that gap was evident. Today, this gap is almost inexistent. There is no gap, almost no gap. And that is why our analysis should be very precise, and it can be done. We can make it more precise only with the help of big data, because human brain cannot distinguish it. So if you have any information on data collection for patent processing, or you have any information on new ways to create patent landscapes and finding that gap, then share it with us. And now I give the floor to a representative of the Federal Institute for Industrial Design Property Protection. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Can you please start my presentation? Good afternoon. My name is Oleg Yan. I'm head of the design office, which is part of the Russian Patent Agency. We are kind of a consulting agency, in fact, which helps with technological and business consulting. And I should say that today we say that data is the new oil, but what is the old oil then, in terms of all these digital things? And what we do today is we cut across different disciplines. So I'll be talking about the new oil, the old oil, expert evaluation, and big data valuation too, because we really need to combine all these disciplines together. As I said, we provide technological consultant services, so we are working with a number of companies, big and large, to help them solve real tasks, such as finding the right direction for investments and for growth, expanding their markets, entering foreign markets, and other problems which they face. What we do is quite simple, I think. I even explain it to 5 to 6 year old children just to try whether it can be explained easily, and they understood it. We take a client, and that client wants something. For instance, Gazprom Neft case is on the slide. They want to create new catalyzers for hydrocracking. Okay, we take that and we look what other companies work in that field in the world. We find competitors. After that, we dig deeper into their technologies, into their solutions, on how they do these catalyzers. After that, we look at the markets where these companies operate and how they protect their intellectual property. By finding answers to these questions, we can give the right kind of advice to our client. Just look at the right hand side of the slide. You see that Gazprom Oil has a number of very important tasks that they want to achieve to reduce the pollution during the cracking and enhance the efficiency. So we analyze patents across the world and we look into who are the leaders currently, and we tell it to Gazprom and tell them, okay, now most companies in the world do not cut costs, they increase the efficiency, so you should do the same. We analyze something else, like the kind of purification which is used in this process. And depending on the exact type of purification process, we can give the right advice to Gazprom. So they would be using the best kind of chemical to purify the material. This is what we do. How we do that? We use big data, and there is a number of layers, a number of levels on which we work. First, you have your competence, then you have instruments to work with big data, like artificial intelligence for one, or some other instruments. Then you have established practices and technological processes to engage these instruments so they would produce necessary results. And then you give your client that piece of advice which it needs most of all. I have another presentation, by the way. It's called The New Instrument for Patent Analytics, and I would like to share it with you because it's very important to look into the current practices of patenting and analyzing patents. Because mostly we've been looking into patents and practices abroad, like Singapore, France, because they really want to change their practices, to have new instruments for consulting. Like every year, we buy 7 best patent analytics systems, executive platinum versions, like top-notch systems. Why 7, not 1? Because we take 7, compare them, and extract the most useful procedures and everything these software can give us to give our clients the best advice. We have a lot of people on our team. They evaluate new patent claims on catalyzers for us, and these people, they have very specific competences. They know catalyzers a lot. They're experts on chemistry, but at the same time, they have additional competencies. They look into claims filed in other countries, Germany, France, America, so they know what kind of inventions are easy to patent and what inventions are more complicated in terms of patenting. That is why China something like investing in lithium, not vanadium, and that is why we also should do that because that is the mainstream now. So we take our experts, which have competences in this particular area, and we ask them, well, these companies are doing this and that, investing in that compound. Why do they do that? What kind of patents they had before that? Maybe they're doing the right thing, and maybe they are wrong. Just analyze their patents and give us your expert valuation, whether we should do the same or we should do something, well, maybe opposite. Ideally, we received the following advice. Like in 2009, they created this thing, which helped them to store this compound, and that is why they reoriented their investments and decided to dig deeper in that direction. We used to work only with major companies. Now we work with smaller companies too, with small and medium-sized enterprises. So we have our own patent landscape portfolio. It comprises 4 most promising direction of investments, 4 main Russian strong points: organics, breeding varieties, crops. That is one of the strong points we have. So we created that portfolio of patents in that field to show our clients the current global tendencies. Or take L'Oreal or any other company.
And we will see that L'Oreal company collects a lot of technical solution across the globe to use it in their manufacturing process. And we need to provide a set of recommendations for Russian companies. And we cannot simply tell them, do what L'Oreal does, because it will cost a lot. Plus, they need infrastructure, they need R&D centers. We tell them quite the opposite. What we tell them is, look into what L'Oreal does, then look for companies who do something similar in Russia, who does it, and work together to make a product with a greater commercializing potential. There was one more case with the analysis of fibers. We find out that there were fibers that were much more durable than carbonic fibers. And we find out that the technology belonged to a Japanese company called Terray. After analyzing all of the graphs and data at our disposal, we made 4 recommendations to our clients. We said that there are 4 various behavior strategies. A European one, a Japanese one, a Korean one, and a Chinese one. All of them has its own risks. And by following one of those strategies, you will establish a path of development. We have a lot of similar projects, of strategic projects, operational projects. One of these services is called R&D Entourage, where we help our clients to understand whether they need to finance some certain program. For example, Gazprom has around 100 offers per year, and the return on investment is at a very high level. And basically what this office said, that if you do not invest in this particular program, it will be the end for you. But how do you pick 10 out of the several hundred offers? Our tool, R&D Entourage, helped to understand, to prioritize various strategies. for the company. And lately, we feel like going beyond patent analytics. We want to go into technology management. We have a lot of partners with various companies in Russia who evaluate assets, who do scouting to have a more detailed business consulting product. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. You know, I'm a financial analyst, and I was sitting here and thinking, there why the market nearly collapsed. Okay, because the oil and gas industry stopped to pay interest to vanadium. So these tools really give us an opportunity to see how the situation changes. 10 years ago, a financial expert would never study what happens with patent mapping. Because, you know, they would tell me that so many people now register their patents when I was thinking that a patent solicitor is a nice thing to do. But today we see a very strong correlation. And let me please tell you that when we try to explain why patents are better, is because you will be paid money for them. So if a company patents one technological solution in one country and another technological solution in 60 countries, the second one will be much more valuable. Thank you so much. When talking about patents and the fact that they cost some money, we cannot but say that Russia traditionally, starting from the Soviet time, didn't resolve the issue of patent valuation. We do not have lending mechanisms for patents. And one of the reasons why the situation is like that is because the state doesn't have a methodology to evaluate patents. There is a lot of work underway in this field, and of course big data provides us with new opportunities to evaluate patents and IP value, to conduct IP valuation in general. Now I would like to speak about big data's influence on IP valuation to the President of Board of IPQuorum, Alexander Sukhotin. Well, we will be speaking about a crowd lending platform, Co-Finance. It is a platform that was launched in summer. What became a reason why we decided to launch such a platform? Well, today intellectual property is an asset. It is profitable for right holders, and IP can be a subject of deals. And if you want to get a loan to develop your IP or to create a new intellectual property, there is almost no way how you can do that. The banking sphere is so much far away from the IP market that it makes it impossible. Of course, we should change that. And the task of our platform is to show financial institutions that IP can be an investment object, that it has investment potential. When we're speaking about fundraising, and when we're speaking about using IP as a collateral, the question is, how do we evaluate IP? Because deals with lending are quite long-term deals, so we should be mindful of revaluation throughout the time period when an IP work is a collateral. Of course, we see an enormous growth in IP consumption. We have a lot of platforms, we have a lot of streaming services that make it easier for us to consume and purchase IP. Now, the tendencies that we see on the market when we work with Russian author societies, we see a drop in profit of radio stations because people are no longer interested in it. They are not interested in listening to some ads. They prefer to use streaming services where they have their own playlists, where they have suggestions without any ads, and sometimes they do not even need to have the internet connection. Some time ago, your classic radio station would have around 1 million listeners. Today, 1 million people can listen to a million of various playlists. So the level of consumption is growing, is skyrocketing, and that will entail the growth in IP creation. Demand gives rise to supply. And we will have more and more IP works, creations, and what we had in the civil code 10 years ago is not enough for all of the range of IP that we have today. It is now so different that the law actually exhausts itself when it comes to describing what is and what is not a work of intellectual property. What we also need, we need tools and services that will have to witness the use of intellectual property. For example, record rights for music used by food industry, by restaurants and cafes, didn't have any standard statements, any standard reports. Today we have online services that provide every end user with a list of records or with information on what type of music was used in a particular restaurant. And we actually partner with the services, and that helps us to distribute enumeration with greater precision, with greater accuracy. That boosts consumption and the variety of IP, and also help us to bear witness to the use of intellectual property. We also know who uses intellectual property and when. To our mind, there is no exact answer to this question because, for example, if one song has been used 1 million times on the internet, for example, that there is 1 million views, it doesn't imply that it is profitable for its right holder. It is a very peculiar work of intellectual property, and you cannot possibly apply the standards of other IP types valuation to this particular object. You should look at the market, what are the prices, and you should come to a conclusion on the cost of this particular object. Of course, each intellectual property work is unique. It is very hard to look for something similar, and you cannot use the cost approach. That is the approach that we take with real estate. We cannot to look at the investment raised, the fund raised. How much does a song cost? for example, written by Paul McCartney, that he dreamt of last night. How much does it cost him to write this song? It doesn't cost him anything. This mechanism simply does not apply here. That is why we came up with a different approach. It is an income approach. For us to we try to understand what was the income of using in IP work. And it is not enough to know everything about the quantity. It is also very important to be aware of all of the financial aspects that relate to this particular IP work. IP chain helps to keep track of all of the transactions, and we in good time introduce a mechanisms where all of the information about the use of the particular piece of intellectual property is correlated with the financial information. And if the right holder is ready to disclose this information, then IP chain offers an opportunity to provide statistics on where this particular piece of IP was used and how much money was paid for it. So it is not even important to speak about big data, but we should rather introduce the notion of big data, which helps us to track the quality of use and enables us to evaluate on who and how and for how much money used a particular piece of IP for its delivery, for its marketing, and as a conclusion to calculate how much the right holder earned.
If I do understand you correctly, you analyze big data, you collect it, analyze it, and that helps you to establish the value of intellectual property. Yes, when it comes to copyright and related rights in the field of industrial patents, that must be something different to what we do. What we do today is mostly copyrights and related rights per se, not in the field of the industrial innovations. I don't think we have any professionals in that field here, but I think that it's usually to apply an approach different to the income approach, because you can never establish the real income of a patent holder. The big data give us other opportunities, like to create new technological models and assess the current ones. The big data gives us new ways to create the forecast systems for income, because we get the data on consumer behavior, and we can use it to forecast the income in the future. We can forecast fashion and future demand, and we can even stimulate demand on some certain kind of music, this way manipulating the market with the help of big data in areas where it never existed. Like we all know about manipulation in the finance market, but now we can manipulate consumers in the field of media, even in the field of rights themselves. We can manipulate behavior of consumers in the field of patents and intellectual property. So we need a proper regulation to regulate this manipulation too. We are not talking about the day of today, we're talking about future mostly. So I would like to ask our expert, head of the Department of Technologies and Knowledge of the High School of Economics, would take part in this conversation and share the strategic approaches for artificial intelligence and how it can be used to develop the intellectual property market. So let's look into the future. Good afternoon, colleagues. First, I'll give you a number of slides and comment on a number of things my colleagues said. Then I show you a video on big data and give you my strategic overview. First, I'd like to respond to Oleg and then comment on Alexander's idea. Valuation is very complicated. Patent valuation, for example. A lot of people are racking their brains trying to create a model that would forecast, predict the value of a patent, but it never happens. Some articles I've read, they even say that a model would be the best if it would not depend on any metadata. It will be just saying $0, $0 again. Because when you put $0 on a patent as a forecast, you will be probably most accurate, because some patents fail, some patents succeed in terms of the commercial profit. Take movies. There is a blockbuster, there is some very popular movie, and there are unpopular movies, a lot of them, and it all balances out around the figure of 0. So when it comes to trends on the current market, it's the same. We never can predict it, so it's better not to predict anything at all sometimes. First, I would like to tell you what are probably the ways to find new instruments to assess the value of intellectual property, how to forecast it, because we need to understand not only the price of labels, content, but also we need to understand whether we should invest in it or not. Like 1 million people could listen to a song, but it doesn't mean that that song will be giving you profit. But if 1 million people wrote that they would enjoy a song that would be similar to that one, but would be a bit different, then it means that you need to invest in such a song so it would appear and people would like it and let you get profit. So that is why mind the behavior. Like millions of people write, I enjoyed this book, I enjoyed another like that. I would like to see some other book which would be similar to these two, but will have that kind of plot. So we need to invest not in the books which already exist, but in the ones which our consumers would like to read in the future. That's the right type of investments. Of course, we need to analyze competitors and their products. We need to assess the market. And then we need to assess the consumer expectations. We should never neglect consumer expectations. Robin Hood, for instance, he used to rob the rich and giving the money to the poor. Today, in our global village, we can never, almost never, manipulate the people at such a scale. If you make people angry, they think that your business is unethical. You cannot change their opinion. That will be the end of your company. We know such examples when huge aggregators of intellectual property in the field of science offend scientists. Scientists start to boycott them. They start to unsubscribe. They never use this platform, and the company, the platform, it just disappears because it's not popular anymore. It has offended the community. It cannot reverse that opinion, that negative opinion about them. That is why we need ethics experts, experts on ethical behavior of companies, so that we would never create such bad PR that would turn the people away from your company. This is why we need big data. Big data can help us to assess the current moods among the people. They can help us to collect the data on geography, on the regulations in that or this country, and the behavior of people in this or that country. You have that data, but you need to analyze it. It's not enough to collect data, we need to analyze it to get some sense out of it. Some say that language is part of our subconsciousness, like we are predetermined to know some certain language, like we inherited from our parents. And same goes for big data assessment. Some say that mining of texts is cheap and it gives you insights instantly. But still, you need to analyze it. You need to analyze this data. Only insights you get after proper analysis can give you real benefit. For instance, we come through a number of revolutions over the last years. We've seen a number of new languages which are established on the foundation of artificial intelligence and new vectors and everything. And these new languages were used to create new technologies, new solutions. Like we can now analyze sarcasm and irony in the language of people thanks to these new algorithms. And that is important for consumer behavior analysis because older algorithms would see irony and sarcasm for what they are, at the face value. These algorithms did not understand that irony and sarcasm mean the opposite. Now we have algorithms which get irony and sarcasm, and it helps a lot. Also, new algorithms help you to write a text. You just tell to that algorithm what you want to see, and it can create a text out of your instructions. And some algorithm can pass the Turing test. But these solutions are very expensive, like the High School of Economics and Sberbank, our leading bank, they have these technologies. But it takes you dozens of terabytes of data and thousands of documents to analyze and then create that algorithm. It would help you to create texts instantly with the help of that machine learning and artificial intelligence technologies. And only those businesses which apply these new technologies, use new ways of analyzing consumer behavior will be the leading in the future. And we at the High School of Economics, we can help companies with that, with consumer assessment. Our assessment is all about analyzing technologies. Oleg Yan has a similar system, I think. We believe that analyzing technologies and innovations is the key to success. We collect a lot of texts to analyze the current trends and tendencies. And let's take cartoons for children. Like we have a lot of characters, right? Like Smurf and others. We analyze all characters, all cartoons. We try to look what kind of characters are the most interesting for children, what are most popular, and this way we come to realize what kind of character would be welcomed the most by the audience. So what kind of character a movie company, cinema company should draw in order to make a very successful cartoon. I think everyone likes cartoons, so this is why I chose cartoons as an example. These characters, they can be protected by intellectual property and copyrights. You know that scandal with YouTube when children are on videos. These videos are uploaded to the YouTube and then they are being put down because of the violation of rights on some Peppa Pig character or any other characters. Now we have bots and farms who would farm these kind of videos. They will just generate such content which would collect as many views as possible before being put down, and this way generate profit for their creators. Artificial intelligence sometimes can generate a video with violence, and that can lead to a huge scandal. A company which created that artificial intelligence algorithm was fined and was ordered not to do anything like that. But again, if you know that Peppa Pig is popular and channels which have to do with that character are very popular and generate a lot of profit, then we can do something similar to it, right? And get profit too. We can analyze the traits of that character, maybe its appearance, maybe its character and traits, and then replicate them in a different character and make it successful too, right? Also, people are always labeling things. In English, 25,000 new words appear every year. That's official data. So if you see a new term and you can understand it, then you can use it and to be on the front line of innovations language innovations. Then sentiments analysis. It's also a new thing. New kinds of algorithms which can better analyze texts and decipher humans' emotions like sarcasm and irony. And now we have algorithms which really understand when it is sarcasm and what it is not sarcasm. That really improves consumer behavior assessment and feedback assessment. IP Chain platform is very good. We have a project at the High School of Economics which we would like to see as a stepping stone to creating our own algorithm of that type. Before that, we had no tools to see how people see intellectual property. People would pirate content. People would have their own ethics about that. They would be uploading on purpose something which is protected by the copyright. That was so-called terrorist-like or anti-ethic, non-ethical piracy. Now we can fight it thanks to better services, better platforms, better interface, better recommendations, and people who would download torrents now migrate to Yandex Music, to Spotify, to Netflix, because it's better to pay 200 rubles per month and have very high quality services without the need to go to some pirate site and then torrent anything. But we need to make these companies with services like Netflix maintain proper kind of sentiments in the society so that no one would think that they are doing anything bad. These days, there are a lot of debates over these recommendations algorithm which YouTube uses and Netflix uses, and it's like a rabbit hole because people start to think in a very channeled way. It's a silo mentality of a kind, because a person is being recommended content and that person watches only the content which is recommended to him or to her, and this is why this person does not know anything else besides the recommended content, which is a huge problem.
Probably in the future that will change, because now some people are afraid of automation, and probably there will all be AI atheists in the future, because in the field of AI ethics, I believe the labor market will be almost unlimited. So if we get beyond the ethic issues, the algorithm will always suggest users something similar to what they already knew is not the only way of doing that. Because if you regularly, thanks to intention mining, you suggest something different, and if you see that your consumer wants to listen to something totally different, it may help you to generate even greater consumption and even greater profit. That is very useful for businesses. We need smarter recommendation mechanisms, smarter recommendation algorithms. And of course, these algorithms should know how to evaluate, but it should not be explicit. These evaluation mechanisms should be somewhere within the nodes of the neural network. Even today, we have mobile servers that generates music. You do not have a singer or a composer. This is an AI that generates music. And sometimes it is even better than what people create. For example, it helps you to focus on your work. The question is, if AI generates content, music, then it will be films, then it will be novels, and it generates millions of it each second, then they will be cherry picking. People will be picking things. And if you have influencers, if you have opinion makers who promote this particular algorithm-made creation. How do we distribute added value? For example, if we print this piece of creation on a T-shirt or on some other outfit, what will happen? How do we distribute added value? Well, there are more cases, and unfortunately, I ran out of time, but I hope I will have time during some other event. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. We actually did go beyond our ideas about the future, and I believe that the market will be aware of these tendencies and that regulators will be aware of these tendencies. But today we face a number of immediate challenges in legal regulation. And going back to that topic, I will ask to conclude our discussion Anton Pushkov, who is with the Center of Intellectual Property of the Skolkovo Foundation. Please elaborate on private and public databases. Ilya, you know, when I saw that Peppa the Pig is more popular than Alla Pugacheva, I had my jaw open. Good day. I represent the Center for IP of the Skolkovo Foundation. We have both lawyers and patent counsels. Today, I would like to talk to you about big data, because we have the Law on Information, Article 7. In practice, nothing is perfect. The Skolkovo Foundation has always been working with startups, small companies that we support, and last year we participated in 2 trials. You probably read about them. That is Vkontakte versus Double Data and Headhunter versus Courier. VK versus Double Data is now in the court for IPR, and the second case was won by Vera the Robot, and we were on its side. When we make information available on the internet, and that, by the way, was the first case with social networks, because today we speak with you about social networks data, unprocessed data. So I wonder, what are these quasi-IP objects? Because we have actually a list of objects that are considered intellectual property, but now we have new types of IP that are not enumerated in this law. If I publish something on my VK account, I should understand that anyone can use it. But there are people who have a different opinion. I'm not saying that they're wrong. You should have your own position based on your experience. So some experts believe that this information, and I'm referring to this VK experts, they believe that this information is a part of their databases. So if we start to work with databases, if we process big data, we should think about whether we can actually do that, to whom this big data belongs. So Double Data was sued for mining data for big data processing, because they monitor VK accounts and evaluate owners of these accounts in terms of their financial stability. The Robot Vera case was different. The Vera Robot is a program that helps you to decrease the time you need to review CVs of potential applicants. So in the first case, we process social network users' data. If you are on your VK page, you hardly can imagine that somebody will use this information to evaluate whether you are solvent. But if you upload your CV to Headhunter, then the robot does something that is expected of it to do. But Headhunter's representative said that their website is not a database that they have access to. They said that this information is actually stored in a closed service. But there is a difference here if we compare the civil code and the established practices. We have very little time, but let me just tell you that in the US, they do not have a similar concept. They do not have this concept of database rights. They had this case, HiQ Labs versus LinkedIn, when LinkedIn virtually prohibited HiQ case from to use information of LinkedIn users, and they went to court with it, and LinkedIn had to open this data. In Europe is the same. In order to make data available for processing, especially for scientific purposes, you simply need to access this information on the internet. But where is this border? How do you make your data private if you, for example, upload information to your web page? Should you be mindful that somebody can use this information? And thank you for this opportunity to speak. Thank you very much. In conclusion, let me tell you that we can unite all of today's presentation in a message. Each and every one of us is generating big data. And the way we are perceived by the big data and by the world depends on ourselves. And today, when we address our youth, when we teach people who in the future will become full-fledged part of our society, we teach them how to wash their hands and how to brush their teeth. But today, we should also teach them how to behave properly in the digital world. They should be mindful of what their digital footprint is and what kind of data is collected on the internet. They should be as much aware of it as of the fact that it is necessary to brush your teeth in the morning. And as soon as that happens, the better, because big data is becoming less and less private, but at the same time it becomes more and more objective. And probably when the balance is there, people will no longer fear big data. And our politicians will turn into more effective lawmakers. So probably we should leave this initial fear behind. And most importantly, our political elite should leave this fear behind. I would now ask our technical experts to turn on the video clip that we have, please.
Видео, которое я вам скинул на флешку, включите, да?
Буквально одну минуту.
Я во время видео дам несколько комментариев? Возможно?
Да, пожалуйста.
Коллеги, я дам несколько комментариев, но я, знаете как, есть такой...
Colleagues, a couple of comments. You know, sometimes what you say doesn't really correlate with the video. And you said that now people use streaming services more than they use standard channels of communication. You know, we have cybersport, and there are cybersport championships. And, you know, South Korean teams are especially strong. And professional commentators comment, and it looks as interesting as football games. And people prefer to watch this instead of some useful scientific channels. And by the way, experts are very unhappy with that. Google DeepMind trained a neural network to play this game, and this neural network won a game against two top players. So the speed is 500 activities per minute. This neural network had a lower bar, only 300 actions per minute, but still it outplayed these two players. I myself played this game, and I know that this kind of thinking was absolutely out of the box kind of thinking, because it seemed like this neural network was a human. And it seemed like its strategy was way more advanced, and it wasn't limited by the already existing preconceptions. And it is true that it adopted an out-of-the-box approach, and it won. It's still learning, and 1 week of learning is equivalent to 200 years of game time for people. For the first time, when it played, it actually lost one time. Then, after one more week of training, it won all of the rounds. So now what we see AI doing, it is very strategical, and many strategic analysts say that they want AI to propose information. For example, what should be the strategy, the development strategy for a state, for a country? Let artificial intelligence tell us what we should do, and let it underpin its point of view. And when we have automated question answering with reasoning, when we have not only answers but arguments, then probably we will get closer to it, when AI will be a advising robot, if you will.
Okay, and let's stop it here. Yesterday we discussed ethics and legal boundaries for the AI. Now we discuss big data, and big data has no limits. So let's learn how to navigate in this sea of big data. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's see you again next year.